I'm Emma Wilson, 28, and I never thought a text message could shatter my world. My hands trembled as I read my father's words. We're cutting all ties. Don't come around ever again. All because I fell in love with someone they deemed beneath our family status. Jason was everything I wanted, but to my parents, his bank account mattered more than his heart. I collapsed onto my kitchen floor, tears streaming down my face, wondering how my own family could discard me so easily. What I didn't expect was my sister's reaction, how her response would change everything. If you're watching this from somewhere around the world, hit that subscribe button and let me know where you're tuning in from. I'm about to share how my family fell apart and how sometimes the family you choose becomes more important than the one you're born into. Growing up in affluent Westport, Connecticut meant expectations came with the zip code. Our 5-bedroom colonial house with its manicured lawn was more than a home, it was a statement. My father, Robert Wilson, built his investment firm from scratch, and he expected his daughters to maintain the social status he'd worked to establish. My mother, Catherine, organized charity galas and tennis tournaments at the country club, always maintaining the perfect facade even when things were crumbling behind closed doors. From childhood, the messaging was clear: attend an Ivy League school, pursue a respectable career, and most importantly, marry someone from our circle. I followed the script through high school and into Yale, where I studied marketing to please my father while secretly wishing I'd chosen something more creative. My sister Megan, 3 years younger, seemed more willing to push boundaries, but even she understood there were lines we shouldn't cross. During my senior year, small cracks started appearing in my perfect daughter veneer. I began questioning why my parents' approval hinged on such superficial things: the brands I wore, the people I associated with, the career path I chose. After graduation, I took a marketing job at a firm my father approved of, but volunteered at a youth center on weekends, something I kept quiet about at family dinners. That's where I met Jason Martinez 6 months ago. He was coordinating a mentorship program for teens from underprivileged backgrounds. While I awkwardly tried to connect with the teenagers, Jason moved among them with natural ease, making them laugh and listening to their problems with genuine interest. When a fight broke out between two boys, I stepped back in alarm while Jason calmly intervened, speaking to them with respect rather than condescension. First time volunteering, he asked afterward, handing me a cup of terrible coffee from the ancient machine in the corner. Is it that obvious? I laughed, grateful for his kindness. We stayed talking long after the other volunteers left. Jason had grown up in Bridgeport with his single mother, who worked 3 jobs to support him. He'd earned scholarships to UConn and put himself through graduate school while working nights. Now, as a social worker specializing in at-risk youth, his passion for his work was infectious. Our friendship evolved naturally into romance. Jason challenged my worldview while making me laugh harder than I ever had. For the first time, I was with someone who valued me for myself, not my family name or connections. After 3 months of dating, I couldn't postpone the inevitable any longer. I invited Jason to meet my parents, assuring him they would love him once they got to know him. I realize now how naive that was. The dinner was a disaster from the moment we arrived. My mother's smile froze when she saw Jason's modest Honda parked in our circular driveway. My father's handshake was perfunctory as his eyes assessed Jason's department store suit. Social work, my father repeated when Jason explained his profession. Noble, I suppose, but hardly lucrative. What's your long-term career strategy? Helping people is my strategy, sir, Jason replied evenly. I don't measure success by my bank balance. An uncomfortable silence followed before my mother jumped in with questions about Jason's family, each answer clearly disappointing her. When Jason mentioned growing up in Bridgeport, my father exchanged a knowing glance with my mother. Emma mentioned you attended UConn, my father said, emphasizing the state school's name as if it were a community college. On a full academic scholarship, I interjected, feeling my cheeks burn with embarrassment at my father's thinly veiled condescension. Scholarships are wonderful for those who need them, my mother added with a tight smile. By dessert, I was physically ill from the tension. Jason maintained his dignity throughout, answering their invasive questions with grace, while I grew increasingly mortified. The next morning, my phone rang at exactly 8 a.m., my mother's scheduled time for difficult conversations. Emma, darling, your father has concerns about this young man, she began without preamble. His name is Jason, Mom. Yes, Jason. He seems nice enough, but be realistic about your future. You come from different worlds. Your father and I worry about compatibility. We're compatible where it counts, I replied, already exhausted. Jason is intelligent, kind, hardworking. Those qualities are a good start, but there's more to consider. Financial stability, social connections, shared background. We only want what's best for you. I ended the call convinced they just needed time. After all, I'd always been the good daughter who rarely challenged them. Surely they would see how happy Jason made me and come around eventually. I couldn't have been more wrong. 3 months into our relationship, my father's 60th birthday provided the perfect opportunity for Jason to meet the extended family and my parents' social circle. I assured Jason things would go better this time, safety in numbers, I thought naively. The celebration was held at the Westport Yacht Club where my father was a long-standing member. Jason whistled low under his breath as we pulled into the parking lot filled with luxury vehicles. You didn't mention this was black tie, he whispered, adjusting his tie, the one I'd helped him select for the occasion. Just be yourself, I said, squeezing his hand. Some of my cousins are actually normal humans. The evening started smoothly enough. Jason charmed my Aunt Harriet, my mother's sister, who had always been the family rebel by becoming a professor instead of a socialite. My cousin Rebecca seemed genuinely interested in his work with teenagers. I began to relax slightly, thinking maybe this could work after all. Then my father's business partner, Richard Thompson, cornered us by the bar. Richard had always treated me with the condescending affection reserved for a colleague's daughter, but tonight his attention focused entirely on Jason. So Emma tells us you work with troubled youth from the projects, Richard said, swirling his scotch. I work with resilient young people from underserved communities, Jason corrected politely. They're not troubled. They've been systematically disadvantaged. Richard laughed, as if Jason had told an amusing joke. Well, it's admirable charity work. Though between us, those people rarely appreciate the help. Generational dependency becomes ingrained after a while, doesn't it? I felt Jason stiffen beside me. Actually, the dependency you're referring to is a myth, Jason replied, his voice calm but tight. The systemic barriers these families face would challenge anyone. My clients show incredible resourcefulness with limited opportunities. Richard's smile thinned. Resourcefulness. Is that what we're calling it now? What exactly are you implying? I interjected, unable to contain my anger. Emma, my father, appeared beside us, his expression warning. Richard is entitled to his opinion. Not when his opinion is classist and racist, I shot back. The conversation around us stuttered to a halt. My father's face darkened dangerously. You're being oversensitive, he said quietly. Richard meant no offense. Then he should choose his words more carefully, Jason said, maintaining his composure better than I was. My sister Megan materialized beside us, champagne flutes in hand. Dad, Mom's looking for you by the cake. Something about the photographer. My father hesitated, then nodded curtly before steering Richard away. Megan handed us each a glass. Thought you might need this, she murmured. Don't let Richard get to you. He's an ass to everyone. The incident cast a shadow over the rest of the evening. On the drive home, Jason was unusually quiet. I'm sorry about Richard, I said finally. And my father. Don't apologize for them, Jason replied. But Emma, is this what it's always going to be like? Defending my existence to your family? I didn't have an answer. The following week, I received an invitation to Sunday dinner from my mother. The text specified family only, which clearly meant Jason wasn't welcome. Against my better judgment, I went alone, hoping to smooth things over. Instead, I walked into an ambush. My parents sat at the dining table with folders placed precisely before them. My mother's eyes were red-rimmed as if she'd been crying, while my father's expression remained coldly determined. Sit down, Emma, he said, gesturing to the chair across from them. What's going on? I asked, remaining standing. We're concerned about the direction of your life, my father began, opening one of the folders. This relationship is causing you to act out of character. Acting out of character. By dating someone I care about. By dating someone unsuitable and becoming hostile to family friends, my father corrected. Richard was quite taken aback by your rudeness. Richard was being offensive and elitist. My father waved this away. We've taken the liberty of compiling some information about more appropriate potential partners. He pushed the folder toward me. Inside were profiles of various men complete with photos, educational backgrounds, career details, and family connections. It looked like some bizarre catalog of eligible bachelors, all from wealthy families in our social circle. "You can't be serious," I whispered, looking from the folder to my parents' expectant faces. "Bradley Huntington just made partner at his law firm," my mother said, pointing to a photo of a bland-looking man in his 30s. "And Michael Prescott's family has a summer home right near the Hamiltons in Martha's Vineyard." "I'm dating Jason," I said firmly. "I'm not interested in your hand-picked alternatives." "Emma, be reasonable," my father leaned forward. "What future do you see with this man? He'll never fit into our world." "Maybe I don't want to fit into our world anymore, if it means judging people based on their bank accounts instead of their character." "Don't be dramatic," my mother sighed. "We're trying to help you avoid making a mistake you'll regret." "The only mistake would be letting you dictate my love life based on your outdated classist values," I snapped, grabbing my purse and heading for the door. "Emma Wilson, if you walk out that door," my father began. I turned back. "What, Dad? What will you do? Cut me off financially? I have my own job. Disinvite me from country club events I don't even enjoy. Go ahead." I left with tears streaming down my face, ignoring my mother's calls to come back. The drive home was a blur of anger and heartbreak. How could the people who raised me be so shallow, so cold? For a week, my phone remained silent. No calls from either parent, which had never happened before. When I finally received a text from my mother asking if we could talk, I felt a flicker of hope that perhaps they were reconsidering their position. I should have known better. 2 weeks after the disastrous intervention, I agreed to meet my mother for lunch at a cafe halfway between our homes. I arrived early, rehearsing calm, rational points about accepting Jason and respecting my choices. When my mother slid into the seat across from me, her carefully applied makeup couldn't quite hide the strain around her eyes. "You look thin," she said, instead of hello. "I've been stressed," I replied. "Having your family reject your partner will do that." She sighed, arranging her napkin on her lap with precise movements. "Emma, try to understand your father's perspective. He's built everything from nothing to give you the best life possible. And I appreciate that, Mom. But that doesn't give him the right to control who I love." "It's not about control," she insisted. "It's about fear." This caught me off guard. "Fear of what?" She glanced around, as if worried someone might overhear. "Your father worked extremely hard to build our place in society. He's terrified of losing status of people talking. If you marry—" She lowered her voice. "Beneath us, it reflects on the entire family." I stared at my mother, truly seeing her for perhaps the first time. "That's what this is about, appearances. What people at the country club might whisper about. You make it sound trivial, but these connections matter in your father's world. Business deals happen on golf courses and at galas. Richard has already made comments. I don't care what Richard thinks, and Dad shouldn't either if he had any backbone." My mother flinched. "That's unfair, Emma." "No, what's unfair is judging the man I love because he grew up without a silver spoon. Jason has more integrity and compassion in his little finger than Richard has in his entire body." "Your father will never accept him," she said quietly. "You need to understand that." "Then maybe I need to accept that Dad cares more about his image than his daughter's happiness." The lunch ended with nothing resolved. My mother hugged me stiffly before departing, extracting a promise that I would at least speak to my father. 2 days later, I drove to my parents' house with knots in my stomach. My father was waiting in his study, the room where he'd always conducted serious family discussions. Growing up, being summoned here usually meant trouble, bad grades, broken curfews, inappropriate boyfriends. Today felt no different, except I was no longer a teenager who could be intimidated. "Emma," he nodded to the leather chair opposite his desk, maintaining the power dynamic of being the one behind the desk. Instead, I sat on the couch by the window. A small rebellion, but it felt important somehow. "Mom said you wanted to talk," I began. "Yes. This situation has gone on long enough. It's time you came to your senses." "My senses are perfectly intact, Dad." He leaned forward, steepling his fingers. "I've been patient. I assumed this was a phase, perhaps even a form of rebellion. But your behavior at my birthday party was embarrassing. I was defending someone I care about from classist insults. Richard is an important business partner and friend. Your outburst was inappropriate and childish." I took a deep breath. "I didn't come here to argue about Richard. I came to ask you to give Jason a real chance." Get to know him as a person, not just a social worker from Bridgeport. My father's expression hardened. I've seen everything I need to see. He may be a nice enough young man, but he's not family material. Not our family. That's not your decision to make. As long as you're a Wilson, it absolutely is, he replied coldly. Which brings me to the point of this conversation. You need to choose Emma. Your family or this relationship. The ultimatum hung in the air between us. Even though I'd half expected it, the reality still knocked the wind from me. You can't be serious, I whispered. Entirely serious. This divided loyalty is untenable. Either end this inappropriate relationship and rejoin your family properly, or continue down this path and accept the consequences. What consequences exactly? If you choose him, don't expect to be included in family functions. Don't expect your mother and I to attend a wedding we don't approve of. Don't expect us to welcome his background and connections into our lives. I stood up, hands shaking. I can't believe you're making me choose between my happiness and your approval. I'm asking you to recognize what's truly important. Family. Legacy. Appropriate connections. Love is important, Dad. Kindness. Acceptance. Things you seem to have forgotten. The conversation deteriorated from there. My father's voice grew louder while mine became tearful. When I finally left, nothing had been resolved except the growing certainty that my relationship with my parents might be permanently damaged. Over the next few weeks, the situation worsened. Phone calls became shorter and more strained. Text messages went unanswered for days. Jason felt increasingly guilty. I never wanted to come between you and your family, he said one night as we lay in bed, the moonlight casting shadows across his worried face. You didn't, I assured him. Their prejudice did. But the strain was undeniable. I was excluded from a family vacation to Nantucket for the first time in my life. My parents' annual 4th of July party, which I'd never missed, came and went without an invitation. When Christmas approached, my mother sent a terse text: Christmas Eve dinner at 7. No plus ones. The implication was clear: Jason wasn't welcome in their home, even for the holidays. After agonizing over the decision, I declined and spent Christmas with Jason's family instead. His mother, a warm, hard-working woman who had raised Jason alone after his father abandoned them, welcomed me with genuine affection. His cousins, aunts, and uncles filled their modest home with laughter and love. We ate tamales made from his grandmother's recipe, sang off-key carols, and exchanged thoughtful, inexpensive gifts. For the first time in months, I felt truly accepted. The contrast between this warm gathering and my family's conditional love couldn't have been more stark. My father's communication became increasingly cold and formal after that, limited to curt responses when absolutely necessary. I tried to maintain my relationship with my mother through occasional lunches, but even those became strained as she constantly relayed my father's disappointment. What I didn't realize was that we were heading toward a breaking point from which there would be no return. In early June, I was scrolling through Instagram when a photo stopped me cold. My cousin Rebecca was getting married, a lavish affair at the Westport Yacht Club, judging by the photos. There were shots of my entire extended family, my parents posed stiffly in formal wear, even my sister Megan looking uncomfortable in a bridesmaid's dress. I hadn't been invited. My hands trembled as I flipped through more photos, feeling like a voyeur peering into a world that had once been mine. There was my Aunt Harriet, looking directly at the camera with sad eyes. My mother smiling too brightly. My father, proud and distinguished in his tuxedo, showing no signs that his eldest daughter's absence left any void. I called my mother immediately, not bothering to hide the hurt in my voice. Rebecca got married. Why wasn't I invited? A long pause followed. Emma, don't make this more difficult than it already is. More difficult, Mom. I wasn't invited to my own cousin's wedding. Your father thought it would be awkward, given the current situation. You mean given that I'm dating someone you don't approve of? Rebecca understood. She didn't want any tension on her special day. And I'm the source of tension, not Dad's prejudice or your unwillingness to stand up to him. My mother's voice hardened. This attitude is exactly why your father feels his decision was justified. The conversation deteriorated from there. When I hung up, I was shaking with anger and betrayal. I called Megan, who answered on the first ring. I was going to call you, she said immediately. The wedding was horrible. Dad made sure everyone knew you weren't invited because you'd chosen another path. I can't believe this is happening, I whispered. It gets worse, Megan replied hesitantly. Aunt Harriet tried to defend you and Dad basically told her to mind her own business. The whole thing was so tense. That night, Jason found me crying on our balcony, staring at the city lights through my tears. He held me silently, his presence, a comfort amid the pain. I want to ask you something, he said, finally his voice serious. What is it I wiped at my tears? To my shock, he knelt down, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. This isn't how I planned to do this. I had a whole romantic scenario worked out for next weekend. But seeing you hurting like this, I want you to know you'll always have a family with me. He opened the box to reveal a simple but beautiful diamond ring. Emma Wilson. I've loved you since the moment you tried to look cool in front of those teenagers at the youth center. Will you marry me? Through my tears, laughter bubbled up at the memory. Yes, I said. 1,000 times yes. The ring fit perfectly. Jason had apparently asked Megan for my size, a realization that made me love them both even more. That night, wrapped in Jason's arms, I felt a bittersweet mixture of joy and sorrow. The happiest moment of my life was shadowed by the knowledge that my parents might never share in it. The next morning, giddy with excitement, despite everything I posted our engagement photo on Instagram. Congratulations flooded in from friends and even some extended family members who privately messaged their support. Aunt Harriet called immediately, her delight evident even over the phone. Your parents will come around, she assured me. Love wins in the end. I wanted to believe her. Taking a deep breath, I called my father first, thinking it best to tell him directly rather than have him learn about the engagement online. He answered on the third ring. Dad, I have news. I began trying to keep my voice steady. Jason and I are engaged. The silence that followed stretched for several seconds before I heard the definitive click of him hanging up. My heart sank. I tried my mother next, who answered with a tearful voice. I just heard. Your father is. She trailed off. Is what Mom angry, disappointed, too stubborn to be happy for his daughter? He's very upset, Emma. You know how he feels about this relationship. I'd hoped an engagement might make him reconsider. That my happiness might actually matter to him. Give him time, she whispered, though her tone held little hope. The next morning, I woke to a text message that would change everything. My father had written with cold formality, after careful consideration, your mother and I have decided we cannot support this union. We're cutting all ties. Don't come around ever again. You've made your choice. Now you must live with it. Any financial accounts still connected to the family will be closed within 30 days. Please respect our wishes and make no further attempts at contact. I read the message through tears, my vision blurring the harsh words together. Jason found me curled on the bathroom floor, sobbing uncontrollably. He gathered me in his arms, murmuring comforting words I couldn't process through my grief. They've disowned me, I finally managed to say, showing him the message. His face darkened as he read. Emma, I'm so sorry. If I had known this would happen. Don't you dare, I interrupted. Don't you dare take responsibility for their bigotry. But even as I defended Jason, a hollow ache spread through my chest. My own parents had discarded me, thrown me away like something worthless. How could they do this? How could my mother agree to this? As I sat in stunned silence, my phone buzzed again. It was Megan. I just saw Dad's message. I'm coming over. Don't move. 45 minutes later, a sharp knock sounded at our apartment door. Jason opened it to find Megan standing there, her face flushed with anger, eyes red from crying. She pushed past him and pulled me into a fierce hug. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. I'd assumed Megan had come to convince me, to apologize, to find a way to mend fences with our parents. Her next words proved how wrong I was. Dad has lost his mind, she said, pacing our living room. And Mom is too weak to stand up to him. I can't believe they would do this. You saw the message, I asked, still numb. Saw it, Emma, he sent it to the family group chat. Everyone saw it, Aunt Harriet, the cousins, everyone. She pulled out her phone. But you haven't seen my response yet. She handed me her phone. On the screen was the family thread, my father's cold message disowning me displayed for all to see. Immediately below it was Megan's reply. Dad, what you're doing is cruel and wrong. Emma has found someone who truly loves her for who she is, not for her social status or bank account. If you can't see past your own prejudice to support your daughter's happiness, then you've failed as a parent. I stand with Emma and Jason. Their relationship represents everything our family should value: love, kindness, and acceptance, rather than the shallow materialism you're defending. If Emma is no longer welcome in your home, then neither am I. I looked up from the phone, tears streaming down my face. Megan, I meant every word she said fiercely. This isn't just about you and Jason anymore. This is about what kind of family we are. And I refuse to be part of one that throws people away for loving the wrong person. Jason, who had been giving us space quietly, brought in 3 mugs of tea and set them on the coffee table. "Thank you," he said simply to Megan. What followed was a family earthquake. My father, furious at Megan's betrayal, extended his decree of excommunication to include her as well. The extended family fractured along fault lines that had probably existed beneath the surface for years. Aunt Harriet called me directly, her voice tight with anger. "Your father doesn't speak for all of us, Emma. I want you to know that. Your engagement is wonderful news, and I'd be honored to attend your wedding." My cousin Rebecca sent a tearful voice message apologizing for not including me in her wedding. I was afraid to stand up to Uncle Robert. I should have been braver. "I'm so sorry." Other relatives chose sides more quietly. Some deleted me from social media, while others sent private messages of support they didn't dare express publicly for fear of my father's influence. My mother remained caught in the middle, calling late one night when she knew my father would be at his club. "I don't agree with what he's doing," she whispered, as if afraid of being overheard despite being alone. "But 40 years of marriage. I don't know how to defy him. I've never done it before. Even for your daughter's mom," I asked, the pain sharp in my chest. Her silence was answer enough. Megan and I grew closer through our shared estrangement. She came over for dinner at least twice a week, forming an unexpected friendship with Jason. The 3 of us created our own little family unit, supporting each other through the pain of being cut off from our parents. "You know what's ironic," Megan said one evening as we shared a bottle of wine. "Dad keeps saying Jason isn't good enough for our family, but Jason has shown more loyalty and integrity than Dad ever has." 2 weeks after the fallout, Megan attempted one last reconciliation, meeting our parents for dinner without telling me first. "I thought maybe I could make them see reason," she explained afterward, curled up on my couch, looking exhausted. "But Dad just doubled down. He said we were both being manipulated away from family values. When I pointed out that his behavior was destroying the family, he said that was on us, not him." "And Mom?" I asked softly. She cried the whole time, but didn't contradict him once. Megan's voice broke. "I don't understand how she can just stand by while he does this. She's never known any other way to be," I said, realizing the truth of it as I spoke. All these years of deferring to him, of prioritizing his happiness above everything else. It's like she doesn't know how to exist independently anymore. Late one night, my phone rang with my mother's number. I answered immediately, heart racing. "Emma," she sobbed. "I miss you so much." "I miss you too, Mom," I whispered. "I've tried talking to your father. He won't budge. He says if I see you behind his back, it would be the ultimate betrayal." "And what do you say, Mom?" A long silence followed. "I don't know how to choose between my husband and my daughters," she finally admitted. "I've never had to before." "You shouldn't have to choose," I said. "Dad's the one forcing this impossible situation. He says the same about you and Jason." The circular logic was maddening. We ended the call with nothing resolved, my mother still trapped in my father's orbit, unwilling or unable to break free. The following weekend, Jason, Megan, and I went out for dinner, trying to focus on the future rather than the painful present. Over dessert, Jason brought up the subject we'd all been avoiding. "I need to ask something," he said, looking between us. "Would it be better for everyone if I stepped back, if Emma and I took a break until—" "Absolutely not," Megan interrupted before I could even respond. "Don't you dare let my father win." "This isn't about winning," Jason said carefully. "It's about family. I never wanted to be the reason Emma lost hers." I reached for his hand. "You're not the reason, Jason. Their prejudice is. And if they can't accept the man I love, then maybe the family I thought I had never really existed at all." "The problem isn't you," Megan added. "The problem is that our parents, especially Dad, have spent decades equating worth with wealth. They've forgotten how to see people as people." That night, lying awake beside Jason, I realized a painful truth. The rupture with my parents had revealed just how conditional their love had always been. The perfect daughter they claimed to love was never really me. It was an image, a projection that served their social aspirations. The real Emma, with her own choices and values, was someone they'd never truly known. The realization brought grief, but also a strange sense of freedom. For the first time in my life, I was fully choosing my own path, not seeking approval I might never receive. Planning a wedding without my parents' involvement was harder than I'd anticipated. Each decision, from venues to flowers to guest lists, carried the weight of their absence. I found myself standing in bridal boutiques, surrounded by other women shopping with their mothers, fighting back tears when consultants innocently asked, "And where is Mom today?" Jason's mother, Elena, stepped into the void with gentle understanding. Though she couldn't afford financial contributions, she offered something more valuable: unconditional support. She accompanied me to dress fittings, offering honest opinions and warm hugs when emotions overwhelmed me. "Family isn't always blood," she told me, squeezing my hand after a particularly difficult day. "Sometimes it's who God brings into your life when you need them most." Financial constraints meant scaling back our original vision. Instead of the country club wedding my parents would have expected, we chose a charming, historic library with exposed brick walls and towering bookshelves. Instead of a 10-piece band, we hired a talented jazz quartet Jason knew through his community work. "It's more us anyway," I realized, as our plans took shape. Megan threw herself into the role of maid of honor with fierce determination, as if making up for our parents' absence through sheer force of will. My best friend Sam organized a beautiful bridal shower, carefully avoiding mention of family drama. 3 months before the wedding, I took the painful step of sending invitations to my parents and close family members, despite knowing they would likely refuse. I included a handwritten note to my parents: "Despite everything, I would love for you to be part of our day. There will always be places for you if you change your minds. Love, Emma." 2 weeks later, the invitation addressed to my parents arrived back in my mailbox, returned to sender, scrawled across the envelope in my father's handwriting. I locked myself in the bathroom and cried for an hour. Other responses trickled in. Aunt Harriet not only accepted but offered financial help, which I reluctantly accepted after she insisted. "Consider it an early inheritance," she joked, though we both knew the gesture might permanently damage her relationship with my father. A few cousins accepted, others declined with apologetic notes explaining they couldn't risk angering Uncle Robert. The family continued to splinter along lines of courage versus compliance. My mother called late one evening, speaking in hushed tones. "I got your invitation," she said. "It's beautiful." "Dad sent it back," I replied, not bothering to hide the hurt in my voice. "I know. I'm so sorry, Emma. He's made up his mind." "And you, have you made up yours, Mom?" A long silence followed. "I can't go against him, Emma. Please try to understand. 40 years of marriage. I don't know who I am without him." "You're my mother," I whispered. "Isn't that enough?" She was crying now. "I love you so much. This is tearing me apart." "Then do something about it. Stand up to him just once." "I can't," she repeated. "But I'll be thinking of you every minute of that day. Please know that." Cold comfort from the woman who should have been helping me choose centerpieces and tasting cake samples. The week before the wedding brought a final emotional blow. After a long day of last-minute preparations, I returned home to find a package waiting at our apartment door. Inside was a small velvet box containing my grandmother's sapphire necklace, a family heirloom I'd always admired. A note in my mother's handwriting read simply, "She would have wanted you to have this. Wear it with love." The gesture broke something inside me. My mother could send a treasured heirloom in secret, but couldn't summon the courage to attend her own daughter's wedding. The necklace represented everything complicated about my relationship with my parents, beauty and tradition intertwined with conditions and cowardice. The night before our wedding, Jason found me sitting on our balcony turning the sapphire necklace over in my hands. "Will you wear it tomorrow?" he asked gently. "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me wants to. Another part feels like it's a consolation prize instead of what I really want, her actually being there." He sat beside me, taking my hand. "Whatever you decide is right." "When did life get so complicated?" I leaned my head against his shoulder. "I'm marrying the love of my life tomorrow. I should be purely happy." "Life isn't purely anything," he said. "It's messy and contradictory. It's okay to be happy about us and sad about your parents at the same time." I looked up at him, this wise, kind man who had entered my life unexpectedly and changed everything. How did I get so lucky? "I ask myself the same question every day," he smiled, kissing my forehead. That night, as Megan and I stayed in a hotel room following tradition, she handed me a gift box containing a delicate silver bracelet. "Something new," she said. "To go with Grandma's, something blue." The decision was made. I would wear both tomorrow, the past, and future connected on the most important day of my life. My wedding morning dawned bright and clear, sunlight streaming through the hotel curtains as if insisting on optimism despite everything. Megan was already up arranging coffee and pastries with the efficiency she brought to everything. No crying until after makeup, she warned, handing me a steaming cup. "Sam and the bridesmaids will be here in 30 minutes. I nodded, surprised by the calm that had settled over me overnight. Today was about Jason and me, about the love we'd built, despite every obstacle. I wouldn't let absence overshadow presence. The morning passed in a blur of activity: hairstylists wielding curling irons, makeup artists applying subtle touches, bridesmaids helping me into my dress. I chose a simple, elegant gown that felt true to myself rather than my parents' expectations. When Sam fastened my grandmother's sapphire necklace around my neck, the weight of it felt right somehow. "You look stunning," Megan whispered, tears threatening to ruin her carefully applied makeup. "Absolutely perfect." As the ceremony time approached, an unexpected knot formed in my stomach. In all our planning and adjusting to my parents' absence, one detail had remained unresolved: who would walk me down the aisle. I'd considered asking my uncle, Jason's grandfather, or even walking alone as a statement of independence. In the end, I'd asked Megan to accompany me instead of a traditional escort. "We've been through this together," I told her. "It feels right that you're beside me for this part too." Now, standing just outside the library's grand entrance arm linked with my sister's, I took a deep breath. The string quartet began playing our chosen processional, a contemporary piece that spoke of new beginnings. Ready, Megan squeezed my hand. "As I'll ever be." We stepped forward together, and I felt rather than saw the guests rise. My focus narrowed to Jason waiting at the front, his eyes widening as he took in my appearance, love and awe apparent even from a distance. His mother Elena sat in the front row, beaming through happy tears. The empty chairs reserved for my parents seemed to glare accusingly, but I refused to let my gaze linger on them. This day wasn't about absence. It was about presence. The ceremony passed in an emotional blur, vows exchanged with voices that trembled with feeling, rings slipped onto fingers with promises of forever, a first kiss as husband and wife that drew cheers from our assembled loved ones. As we turned to face our guests as a married couple, I allowed myself to truly look out at the gathered faces. Friends from every stage of my life. Jason's large, boisterous family. My Aunt Harriet wiping away tears beside my cousins who'd been brave enough to come. And my heart stopped. In the very back row, partially hidden behind a tall guest, sat my mother. She was alone, wearing a pale blue dress I'd never seen before, her hands clutching a small handbag in a white-knuckled grip. Our eyes met across the room, and her face crumpled with emotion. I squeezed Jason's hand so hard he looked at me in concern, following my gaze to the back of the room. His eyebrows rose in surprise. "Is that?" he whispered. I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. The recessional music began, and we walked back down the aisle together, my heart pounding with each step that brought us closer to where my mother sat. When we reached her row, I broke protocol and stopped. "Mom," I managed to say. She stood trembling visibly. "Emma, you look beautiful." Around us, guests continued filing out, many watching curiously as they passed. Megan appeared beside me, her mouth open in shock. "Mom, what are you doing here? Where's Dad?" "At home," my mother replied, her voice strengthening. "He doesn't know I'm here." The weight of what she was saying hit me all at once. After 40 years of compliance, my mother had finally defied my father. For me, for this day. "You came," I whispered, reaching for her hand. I couldn't miss my daughter's wedding. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I just couldn't. "No matter what your father said." The receiving line forgotten, I pulled her into a fierce hug, feeling her thin frame shake with sobs against mine. "I'm so sorry," she whispered against my ear. "I should have been stronger sooner." "You're here now," I said, my own tears threatening to ruin my makeup. "That's what matters." The wedding coordinator gently reminded us that guests were waiting for the reception to begin. I pulled back, suddenly unsure. "Will you stay?" "For the reception." My mother nodded, a new resolve in her expression. "I'm not leaving. Not this time." The reception venue, a restored brick warehouse with twinkling lights strung from exposed beams, buzzed with energy as we entered. In the chaos of congratulations and photographs, I kept looking for my mother, afraid she might have changed her mind and disappeared. But she remained sitting somewhat awkwardly at a table with Aunt Harriet, who had taken her under her wing. During the maid of honor speech, Megan addressed the elephant in the room with characteristic directness. "As many of you know, our family has faced challenges recently," she said, her voice steady despite the emotional subject. "But love has a way of creating new paths forward when old ones are blocked. Today, Emma and Jason have shown us all that choosing love requires courage sometimes. And courage, like love, can be contagious." She raised her glass toward our mother, who dabbed at her eyes with a napkin. "To courage, to love, and to Emma and Jason." Later, as Jason and I shared our first dance, I spotted my mother standing at the edge of the dance floor, watching with a mixture of joy and sorrow on her face. When the dance ended, Jason squeezed my hand. "Go," he said softly. "Talk to her." I crossed to where she stood, suddenly shy despite everything. "Mom, would you like to dance with me?" She nodded, allowing me to lead her onto the floor as the quartet played a softer melody. We moved awkwardly at first, neither quite knowing how to navigate this new terrain between us. "Your father will be furious when he finds out," she said finally. "He may not forgive me for this." "Are you afraid of what will happen?" I asked. She considered this something new flickering across her expression. "Yes. But for the first time in my marriage, I'm more afraid of what I'd lose by not being here." "What changed?" "Megan came to see me yesterday," she admitted. "She told me I had to decide what kind of mother I wanted to be remembered as. And I realized I couldn't bear for you to look back on this day and see only my absence." As the evening progressed, my mother gradually relaxed, even accepting an invitation to meet Jason's family. I watched from across the room as Jason's mother Elena embraced her with warm acceptance, the two women who had raised us finding common ground despite their different worlds. "Your mom is braver than I realized," Jason said, coming to stand beside me. "She surprised us all," I agreed, including herself, I think. As the night drew to a close, my mother pulled me aside. "I need to go home and face whatever's coming," she said. "But Emma, I want you to know something. Watching you today, your happiness, your certainty, I saw a strength I've never had. Until now." "What will you say to Dad?" I couldn't help asking. "The truth. That I'm done choosing between my husband and my daughters." Her expression was sad but determined. "Maybe he'll surprise us all. Or maybe," she didn't finish the sentence, but she didn't need to. We both understood the potential consequences of her rebellion. "Call me tomorrow," I asked, hugging her tightly. "Let me know you're okay." "I promise," she nodded. "And Emma, I'm so proud of you." I should have said that more often. As she left, I felt a complex mixture of emotions: joy at her courage, fear for what she might face, hope that perhaps this could be the beginning of healing. But whatever happened next, something fundamental had shifted. My mother had finally chosen to stand with her daughters instead of behind her husband. Jason found me watching the door where she'd exited. "You okay?" "I think so," I said, leaning into his embrace. "It's been quite a day." "The best kind of unexpected," he agreed, kissing my temple. We returned to the celebration, surrounded by people who had chosen to be there to support us, despite pressures or consequences. In their faces, I saw a different kind of family, forming one built on love and choice, rather than obligation and conformity. 1 year into our marriage, Jason and I settled into our new apartment in a diverse neighborhood we both loved. The extra bedroom, originally designated as a home office, had recently been converted into a nursery painted in gentle greens and yellows. At 5 months pregnant, I found myself reflecting on family, the one I'd come from and the one we were creating, with new perspective. After the wedding, my mother had returned home to face my father's fury. Their argument lasted through the night, ending with my father delivering an ultimatum of his own: she could have her husband or her daughters, but not both. To everyone's shock, including perhaps her own, my mother chose us. 40 years is enough, she told him, according to what she later shared with me. "I won't spend 40 more pretending our daughters don't exist because they didn't follow your script." She moved in with Aunt Harriet temporarily, then found a small apartment of her own, her first time living independently in her entire adult life. The separation, initially intended to be temporary, stretched into months as my father refused to bend. Eventually, formal divorce proceedings began, a scandal that rocked their social circle but seemed to lift decades of weight from my mother's shoulders. I should have stood up to him years ago, she admitted during one of our weekly brunches, now a cherished new tradition. Not just about you and Jason, but about so many things. Watching her discover her own voice, her own preferences, everything from the books she read to the colors she painted, her new apartment walls filled me with complicated joy. Her growing confidence and independence were beautiful to witness, though I sometimes felt guilty that my relationship with Jason had been the catalyst for such upheaval. Don't you dare feel responsible, she insisted when I voiced this concern. This was never just about you and Jason. It was about your father's control, my compliance patterns that started long before you were born. Your wedding just forced me to finally make a choice I should have made years ago. My father remained unmoved, refusing all attempts at reconciliation. When I wrote to inform him about his coming grandchild, the letter was returned unopened, just like our wedding invitation. The pain of his rejection had dulled to a persistent ache, rather than the sharp agony of before, but pregnancy hormones sometimes brought it rushing back with unexpected intensity. Do you think he'll ever come around? I asked Megan during one of her frequent visits. She had graduated from law school and taken a position with a nonprofit that provided legal aid to underserved communities, a career choice our father would have disapproved of, but one that fulfilled her. I don't know, she answered honestly. His pride has always been his defining characteristic, but a grandchild might eventually penetrate even his stubbornness. My relationship with Megan had deepened through our shared estrangement. We'd always been close as sisters, but now we'd become true friends and allies, texting daily and supporting each other through the continued family fallout. Jason's mother, Elena, had stepped beautifully into the grandmother role, knitting tiny blankets and reading pregnancy books with infectious enthusiasm. My mother and Elena had formed an unexpected friendship, often shopping for baby items together, despite their different financial circumstances. Your mother is teaching me to knit, Elena told me with amusement. And I'm teaching her to make enchiladas. Who would have thought? Some extended family members had quietly reconnected with us over the past year, usually reaching out with cautious text messages or social media comments to test the waters. My cousin Rebecca, whose wedding I'd been excluded from, had become a regular visitor, bringing her new husband who got along wonderfully with Jason. Uncle Robert's influence is waning, she confided during one visit. People are starting to question why he's willing to miss out on his daughter's lives over something so trivial. Aunt Harriet remained our strongest family supporter, hosting holiday gatherings that created a new tradition to replace the formal, stilted affairs of my childhood. Her home became neutral territory where various family members could interact without directly defying my father's edicts. In my 7th month of pregnancy, I received an unexpected phone call from Richard Thompson, my father's longtime business partner whose classist remarks had sparked one of our early conflicts. Emma, he began awkwardly. I'm calling because, well, I visited your father yesterday. My heart raced. Is he okay? Physically, yes. But Emma, he's not well otherwise. The divorce, the estrangement, he would never admit it, but it's taking a toll. I saw your wedding photo on your mother's social media. You looked beautiful. Thank you, I said cautiously, unsure where this was leading. I may have contributed to the situation. Things I said at your father's birthday about your husband. I've had some time to reflect and I was wrong. Jason seems like a good man. Your father might need more time, but I wanted you to know I regret my part in this. The apology, unexpected and imperfect, still meant something. I appreciate that, Richard. Your father has a photo of you on his desk, he added before hanging up. From your college graduation. He looks at it every day, though he'd deny it if asked. The information settled in my heart like a small seed of hope. Not reconciliation, not yet, but perhaps the first crack in a wall that had seemed impenetrable. As my due date approached, Jason and I prepared for the reality that our child would know only one grandfather. His father had never been in the picture, and mine had chosen absence. The thought brought fresh waves of grief until my mother offered a perspective that helped. Family isn't just about blood or obligation, she said, echoing what Jason's mother had told me before our wedding. It's about who shows up. Your baby will have so many people who show up, me, Megan, Elena, Aunt Harriet. That's more love than many children get, even with a complete set of grandparents. She was right, of course. The family we had built around us, some related by blood, others by choice, was rich with love and acceptance in ways my childhood family had never been, for all its material advantages. When our daughter Lily Elena Wilson Martinez arrived 2 weeks early on a rainy spring morning, the hospital waiting room filled with our chosen family. My mother and Elena took turns holding the baby, tears streaming down both their faces. Megan appointed herself official photographer, documenting every moment. Aunt Harriet brought a family christening gown that had been passed down for generations. "I managed to sneak it out before your father changed the locks," she winked. In Lily's tiny features, I sometimes caught glimpses of my father, the shape of her eyes, the determined set of her jaw when frustrated. These moments brought bittersweet pangs, reminders of what he was missing, what we all were missing through his absence. I kept the door open, sending birth announcements and photos through intermediaries, always met with silence, but never giving up entirely. As I rocked Lily one evening, watching the sunset paint our nursery walls golden, Jason joined us, his hand warm on my shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, noticing my pensive expression. "Family," I replied. "How it breaks and reforms. How we're creating our own now. Any regrets?" His question held no judgment, only gentle curiosity. I considered this carefully, looking down at our daughter's peaceful, sleeping face. "I regret that my father's pride cost him a relationship with you, with Lily, with the woman my mother is becoming. I regret that his values were so shallow that they mattered more than his family." I shifted Lily to my other arm, continuing. "But I don't regret standing up for what matters. I don't regret choosing you, choosing love, choosing authenticity over keeping up appearances. Sometimes the hardest choices are the most necessary ones." Jason nodded, understanding as always. "We've built something beautiful from the broken pieces." "We have," I agreed. "And we'll keep the door open for my father, but we won't wait by it anymore. We have too much living to do, too much love to share." That night, as our little family slept peacefully together, I felt a sense of completion that had nothing to do with having perfect circumstances. Life would continue to bring challenges, relationships would evolve, wounds might heal, or they might not. But I had learned perhaps the most valuable lesson through all of this: family isn't defined by obligation or even blood, it's defined by love, by choice, by showing up even when it's difficult. The family I had lost had been conditional, built on rigid expectations and superficial values. The family we were building now had deeper foundations, acceptance, authenticity, the courage to stand for what matters most. In choosing Jason, I hadn't just found a husband. I had found the catalyst for becoming truly myself, for building connections based on love rather than obligation. And in the end, isn't that what family should be? What about you? Have you ever had to choose between someone you love and family expectations? How did you navigate that difficult terrain? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this journey resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about family love and finding your own path. Thank you for being part of our extended family here. Until next time, remember that sometimes the family you choose becomes the foundation that helps you build the life you deserve.